Okay, everybody's used to model space. Everyone's been drawing in model space. Model space is infinite. Everything is drawn in model space at 1-to-1. What we need to do now is we need to start looking at and learning about paper space as well as viewports. Viewports can be thought of as a window back to model space. So what I want you to do now is at the bottom of the screen here, you notice how I have multiple tabs running across the bottom of the screen? You guys probably have. Okay, so in this file, you can see at the bottom of my screen, I only have 2 tabs. So I have a layout tab and I have a layout 2 tab, and then there's my model space. I'm on my model space tab currently. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on my layout 1 tab. When I select my layout 1 tab, what I actually see is a white box. On the inside perimeter of the white box, there is a dotted line. And then there is another line that runs around it as a box. And when I mouse over the edge, not to click on it, but when I mouse over the edge, it highlights. Okay. What we actually have here is the representation of a piece of paper, which is the white box. That's actually a piece of paper. Think of it as paper. I also call this many times paper space. In previous versions of Aurocad, this was referred to as paper space. Now it's referred to as layout space. Okay, so this is that paper space. It's now also known as layout space. The dotted line that's running around the inside perimeter here, this dotted line represents the printable margin of the paper. So anything that goes outside that dotted line will not print. Okay? The highlighting box here, when you come over and sit over top of it, highlights. This is actually the viewport. This is that window that I was talking about back to model space. Right now, nothing is activated, so I'm working and thinking about working on this piece of paper. However, this window is giving me an image back to model space. So what I'm going to do is, in order to function within model space, I'm going to double-click inside of this window. Now, if I zoom in and out, my paper doesn't move, but my image does, because I'm actually working in model space. So I'm functioning in model space while I am in the layout or paper space. To illustrate this, I'm going to go ahead and grab my circle tool, and I'm just going to draw some lines and some circles sort of very haphazardly. And then I want to exit model space, and I do this by double-clicking outside of the viewport. So anywhere out here in the gray space or on the white space, but it has to be outside the viewport. I can double-click. Now I'm out of the viewport model space, but when I go back to my true model space, I was actually drawing in model space, even though I was in the layout. Okay, here in layout 1 or paper space, if I mouse over the edge of the viewport, not inside, but the edge of the viewport, and click once, I've now activated the viewport perimeter, and I have grips. These little blue dots are the grips. And if I select the grip and then pull, I can now effectively change the size of the viewport. So in essence, I can change the size of the window back to model space. To get off of this or deselect, I can double-click the escape key, and now I'm out. I can also double-click back inside and move the image so that the image that I want to display is now visible. Okay? So you can see and change what is being displayed in your viewport. Now what's going to happen when you're working with viewports? If the viewport is not active and I'm drawing in what I think is the viewport, I'm not drawing in the viewport. I'm actually drawing in paper space. So if I move this viewport over, get inside the viewport and move, do you see how if this is not active, I'm actually drawing on the piece of paper. Okay, I'm drawing on the piece of paper here. This is active. If I draw here now, I'm drawing in model space. You see that? Okay. If I were to come outside of my viewport and draw across the viewport like this, it doesn't matter. I'm drawing on the piece of paper. If I double click inside here, do you see how that is occurring? I'm actually now in my model space, and I have lines drawn across my viewport, but it's not in model space. Okay? So it's a very important understanding that if you're going to draw and work in model space, you have to activate the viewport. If you're going to draw on the paper space, make sure it's not active in model space. Okay? Now the other thing you can also do, deselect the viewport, select the outside edge of the viewport, and hit delete. You can get rid of the viewport. You're not affecting anything in model space. Everything you did in model space is still here. The only thing you've done is you've gotten rid of the window that looks at model space. So now you have a piece of paper with some scribble on it. If I want to get rid of my scribble, I just highlight it and hit delete. Now I have a blank piece of paper. What I want to do is I want to get that viewport back. And to place a new viewport, what we would do is we'd go up to the tab here at the top of the screen. It's called Layout. And I select the Layout tab. Then I'm going to slide over on my ribbon bar to where it says Layout Viewports. And for me, I want to get what is just a rectangular viewport. So I come down to the word rectangular, pull down, select rectangular, and then I'm going to just basically click and pull, and now I have a viewport. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to grab rectangular again, and I'm going to go ahead and click and pull another viewport. So now I have two viewports. If I double click inside one, I can zoom in and out. If I double click inside this one, I can zoom in and out. And they function separately. So with two viewports, we can very quickly and easily discuss and visually represent scale. So what I'm going to do is in this top viewport, I'm going to double click, and then I'm going to come down to this area. This is my scale indicator. It's on my drafting tools down here at the bottom of the screen. And then I'm going to select those numbers. And there's a little pull down arrow next to it, which remember, the little pull down arrows mean there's more behind it. So I select the numbers, and now I have all of these preset scales. I'm going to go all the way to the top where it says 1 to 1 and select it. Wow, did you just see what happened to my viewport? It just zoomed in all by itself. Now obviously, the image doesn't fit at 1 to 1. Doesn't fit, but that's okay because this is just an illustration of what's working. This page is actually an A-size sheet of paper, which is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So I knew this wouldn't fit. 7 inches, knowing this is 11 inches, this is proportionally correct. Now I'm going to double click in the viewport down at the bottom, and I'm going to go to my scale, and I'm going to go ahead and select 1 to 2. That 1 to 2 is half the size because it is scaling things in half, or 1 to 2. So every unit is being cut in half. However, it is still representing the object in its full size. Okay, 7 inches. This should be read as 7 inches. However, it is at 1 to 2. So if we were to actually print these particular objects, this 4-inch line would be 2 inches. This 4-inch line in this viewport would be 4 inches. 1 to 1, 1 to 2. Alright, so you effectively can see how this is functioning. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you guys how text will function, because you're going to need to put your name on these after you print and give them to me with the particular assignment you'll do. So we're going to come up here to the text button. It's a giant A on the annotation tab, on the annotation ribbon tab. And I want you to pull it down. And for almost all of the text that we're going to use here in Aurocad, you're going to use multi-line text. Okay? So pull down the big A text button, grab multi-line text. And then what you're going to do is a text little box will occur next to your cursor. All I want you to do is click and pull and make a small box. And what you're doing is you're creating a text box. Once you've done that, you can now go ahead and type just like you're typing in Word. So I'm going to go ahead and type my full name. And what I would like is for you to use all capital letters. Okay? Use all capital letters. In technical drawing, at this point in time, we're going to use all capital letters so that there's very, very little confusion when we're talking about letters. Okay, we want to eliminate any possible confusion of uppercase to lowercase and things of that nature. So always, 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 all text will be capital letters. If your name does not fit in the box that you've made, just select this little tiny icon pull area, select it and pull. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull it out so it all becomes one line. Okay? The next thing regarding your text is that all the text that we use is going to be one particular size. And all of the text is going to be 1/8 of an inch. Okay? This right now, if I look up here at the size of my text, is 0.2. Does anybody know the decimal equivalent for 1/8 inch? 0.125. So I'm going to now highlight my text. I'm going to come up to here and I'm going to highlight 0.2 and I'm going to type in 0.125 and hit enter. And you can see that my text just changed size. This is now 1/8 inch in height. Now, once you've done that, you'll have to add some other text, but you now, in essence, know how to handle text. All right? When we are ready to print, the way that you print in Aurocad is you go up to the big A, you're going to slide down to the word print, you're going to slide over and come back up to the word plot, because printing and plotting are the same process. I'm going to select plot, and then I'm going to get a dialog box. And here I do not want to learn about batch plotting, so we're just going to continue to plot a single sheet. We're only doing a single sheet. When the dialog box comes up, first thing that we need to do is we need to select the printer. So the printer that we're going to use, I'm going to pull this down, and the printer that we're going to use is going to be the C119 printer. And the C119 printer is actually right behind us in the room next door, called C119. When I select the printer, I'm now then able to do what is called a preview, where I would come down to the bottom of the screen and hit preview. Making sure that the plot scale is all set 1:1. We don't need to change any of this information here. I'm going to come down and hit preview, and then I'm going to actually get a preview of exactly what's going to print. This is what will be printed when I send this to the printer. So anything that you print, you need to preview. Always, always, always preview. Okay? If you think your preview is exactly what you want, then you would go up and hit this print icon. If not, which we're not going to print this right now, if not, then you're going to go over here and hit the close preview window. By hitting this print icon, it actually prints your particular screen here. If you close the window, it takes you back to the dialog, in which case you could still hit OK and then send to the printer. Okay? Hope that helps with the viewports and setting up viewports, scaling viewports, text addition, as well as how to output to a printing device.